Hey everybody, Jeff Beat here with the Kung Fu Driving Podcast, and I am excited to welcome a special guest here today, an award-winning production designer, art director, artist. You know his work from the Mitchells versus the Machines, Planes, and most recently, the epic Netflix anime Blue Eye Samurai, Toby Wilson. Toby, thank you so much for joining the Kung Fu Driving Podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jeff. I really appreciate you having me on.
It's great to have you. I'm so looking forward to picking your brain about all things Blue Eye Samurai. Talk to me a little bit about who you are. How did you get involved with Blue Eye Samurai to begin with?
So, a little bit of background. I started my career in video games a long time ago, and doing concept art, storyboards. I always wanted to work in animation. Thankfully, the stars aligned. I was able to get a gig working with Disney, which was a dream come true. Which is where I made some friends. Working on these shows. It's like you're going to war making these things, and you're in the trenches and you make friends, and you realize, oh man, this person was great, and we got this done together. So after Mitchell's, I was at Sony working as a 3D Viz Dev supervisor for the studio, and I got a call from one of those friends, and his name is Farrell Barron, and awesome guy. He was a executive over at the Netflix action series, and he says, "Matobes," because that's how he talks. And he calls everybody Bubba, which is nice. But he says, "Matobes, I need your help. I have a project that I think you would really be interested in, but it's in trouble, and need your help on this one." So just for context, I jumped in. The show had been going on. They've been working on it for like a year and a half, and it's a great show. And he was saying, look, they're looking to get some new art leadership on the project, and we need to get it back on track, back on the rails, and to get this thing done. And so he said, just wanted to check your interest. And I was like, okay, well, what is it? And he explained what it was. And he said, let me send you the scripts. So he sent me the scripts, and I read the first three that night, because I started reading the first script, and the pages just turned. Like the story's so freaking good, and I couldn't put it down. So I was reading the first three shows, and then the next day I read some more, and I was kind of sold. I was reading this story, and I was like, man, I gotta be a part of this. It's amazing. So, and then he told me who's on it, and I worked with Jane before at Disney, not on the same project, but kind of, we were, tangentially, I guess, on separate projects. And I've worked with Earl before over at Sony, and our previous lead, and yeah, the scripts that Michael and Amber wrote were just amazing. So I was like, okay, let's do this.
Now, you said that the script grabbed you right away, and I talked to Jane about this on the show. There were so many elements that go into Blue Eye Samurai. At any point in reading the script where you're like, there's no way they're going to make this work?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, that was a big part of what they needed my help with, right? Because they were like, how do we do this? Because they were tracking behind, and they didn't have all of the first two episodes done yet, and from a design standpoint, and they needed to wrap them up. And they were like, how do we make 6 more of these things? And then we have to get all through asset build, because asset build hadn't started. The layout hadn't started, because you can't start that without assets. So yeah, I mean, you read these scripts, and you're traveling across Japan, and so that was where we had a big heart-to-heart with all the leads and the showrunners, and we all took a long look, and we took like a 4-day retreat or a week-long retreat, read the scripts, and figured out, okay, how do we get this done? Do we need to have this be a new set, or can we use this other set and just stage it there? But the whole point is you don't want to trim off the flesh that makes the story what it is. So you want to keep the heart of it and make it as good as possible. And so we all kind of partnered and collaborated on that to figure out, okay, what does the story absolutely need, and let's make sure we get that in. And then also just looking at how our vendor worked, right? So it's a 2.5D production. So just making sure, like, well, what can we get away with? That's just a painting, you know, like, let's just paint that versus, okay, this, we need to build it out and flesh it out 100%, you know, and you find ways, okay, we have to fill the entire city of Edo with people. All right. You know, your work, that's where you just work with Brian Kessinger, our character lead, and Jane. And they did a fantastic job working on the characters. And we just talked about, okay, well, you could do it this way, and come up with a menu to choose from. We can drill into any of that if you want to, but that's the first thing when you read the script, you're like, wow, that's amazing. And the next thing is in your brain, how the hell are we going to do this?
Well, talk to me a little bit about your role then as production designer. You said you came on to kind of help out and guide it through. What then did you actually have to do with all of the various parts and people that you all of a sudden had to kind of corral?
Right. So, okay, a production designer, just the real quick high level, the way I best describe it when somebody asks, well, what does a production designer do? Production designer, art director, the names are interchangeable, but depending on where you go, you know, the production designer oversees, on our particular production, I oversaw everything visual, but the name art director, so anything art and visual related, the production designer directs it. And of course, it has to be in alignment and follow the vision of the supervising director, Jane, and our showrunners, creators, Michael and Amber. So it's my job to service the story and their intent, and to make sure all the visuals, everything you see, supports the story, looks as great as possible, and we get it all done. So that's in a nutshell what a production designer does. I had the pleasure of having two art directors working with me, Emil Mitev and James Wood Wilson. And just because of the sheer scope of this thing, it was huge. So the way we worked out is they would leapfrog, right? From evens and odds. Okay. It's like, okay, James, you're taking odds, and Emil, you're taking evens, or something like that. And so I would work with on every episode, but I would have, they were my colonels, right? So if I'm considered Jane's art general, they were my colonels that would like manage the day-to-day and everything, so that I could come in and we could strategize and talk strategy with them. I would still be in dailies and everything, but then if we had to drill into a lot of nitty-gritty, I would really lean into my art directors and appreciate all of their help. Because a production designer, you oversee the visual development and design. Thankfully, Brian Kessinger and Jane Wu, like, they both were really driving the characters. So by the time I came on board, early on, the look was going a little too much like Arcane, but they had figured it out, kind of like they wanted this Tekken concrete look that she was going for, and a more 2D look. So I was like, great, design, character design, you guys got it. I just need to work with you on the look dev of it, and how do we get it? How do those characters look in shot? So then that gets into asset build. So you get the design side of the pre-pro, and then you get into asset build, where you're modeling characters, you're modeling props, and you're surfacing it. How's that going to look in the render? How should it take light? What color should it be? How much texture versus how little texture? Background painting, you oversee backgrounds. Then that involves a layout. We had an awesome previous supervisor, Earl Hibbert, who managed like a lot of the camera cinematography. But then like the background paintings and where we put our contrast and our detail and the set dressing, that falls under my responsibility. And okay, let's see, that was background painting, effects design, and directing the effects team, and lighting and compositing. So setting up, hey, this is what the lighting should look like, and this is the color it should be to support the mood and the tone of the story. And then directing the lighting with the lighting and compositors, and training them to get that show style. Oh, and I mentioned look dev, the look dev department, like how do the characters take light? How does their skin react? What about that line? How does the reflection work in the show? Things like that. And then lastly, visual post-production. So, when they say, we'll fix it in post, that stuff.
That
So,
sounds like a massive, massive team. What kind of numbers are we talking about when you go all in on everybody that worked on this?
right. I don't have actual numbers. I'm sorry. I'm gonna do mental math and using my memory, right? So with those teams that I worked with, see, like Jane drove the story team, so I can't tell you with
Yeah,
confidence
yeah.
how big the story team was. But so, like I mentioned, I had 2 art directors. The character team that Brian was spearheading, like I think there was something like 4 to 6 of them. The viz dev team, the visual development, like the design team, when we were in our height, in the thick of it, hey, we had like 18 artists, plus we had a modeling team, which we can get into later if you'd like. The workflow. So we modeled our sets. So we had 5, on average, about 5 modelers. I think we had 6 at one point.
Wow.
Earl and his previous team, I want to say, were between like 8 and 10, something like that. And then now we get in. So that's all pre-production, right? That's here on the US Netflix side of things. Well, and it's not just US. We had an international team, thanks to work from home. And then on our vendor side, right? On our vendor side, the Blue Spirit background teams. We had 2 teams that also would leapfrog from episode to episode. And I want to say they were like, each team was an average of 9 artists plus their lead. So 20. Layout team, I can't remember how big layout team is.
Wow.
Yeah, I was at least maybe 15, maybe more.
Wow.
Animators, at least 20, but definitely more.
Oh man.
Effects team, again, depending on where we were, like between 10 upwards of maybe 20, 25. And then like in comp, once we were in the thick of it in the last couple episodes, and we were like maybe including the rendering, like 30 plus 30. So all in all, it's probably, that's, again, my math is bad, but maybe approaching like 200 people.
Wow.
And then post we had an awesome colorist, Natasha, who was fantastic, and she was a great creative partner.
With all of those people, and from what I understand, when you guys started this, you ran into COVID complications to throw on top of all of that. At what point were you able to kind of breathe and take in what you guys created, because it's such an amazing show? The reception has been incredible. Have you been able to sit back and say, man, we did that?
Well, you kind of get that at various stages. And in the production designer role, it's a blessing and curse. It's a curse because you're one of those first on, last off, but also it's a blessing because you get to see every stage. And the cool thing is that, when you spend all of this time and energy working on the design and all the pre-production and all the best laid plans, right? You lay out these plans, and no plan survives first contact. So then the rubber hits the road, and you start making the shots, and then it comes back and you see the characters animating in the sets that you built and designed, and you're like, oh wow. And you're like, hey, we're doing it, Peter, and then you get it back in lighting, and you're like, okay, the plan's working, the color, there's things we need to fix, but look at that, the effects are looking good, and the color is looking this way. So I see it at every stage. So I didn't have that epiphany that, like, say, like Brian Kessinger, our character design lead, like he finished on our production, and we hadn't even finished the first 2 episodes and lighting yet. So when the show went live on Netflix, he got to just binge it and be just like, see it all for the first time. I get to see it, like all the, like, oh, here it is, and we got to, okay, here's all the notes at this stage, and then we see at the next stage, more notes. But I will say at every stage, it's rewarding, because you put so much work. And I gotta throw it out, a shout out to those 200 artists. on the from the pre-pro side on Netflix. We had an awesome team on the Blue Spirit side. Again, awesome team. Every single one of those 200 people wanted this thing to be as good as it possibly could be. And you can't make these things without an army. And those they were art warriors, all of them.
Speaking of art warriors, Jane did install a program to train all of you artists in a little bit of martial arts. Were you involved in any of that at all?
Unfortunately, I didn't get to be in her boot camp because I was too busy doing other things. Like she managed the that side of things. Meanwhile, I would keep the visuals on track. I did catch it on the periphery, and when we're working late or jamming on the weekends, we would hop on calls and discuss that stuff, and and bring and remind things and we would have these discussions like, hey, when we get into animation, we need to watch it because they're carrying the swords wrong, and they're drawing the sword incorrectly, or like, oh, by the way, check this shot. That's not how you play a shamisen, and things like that. And like, oh yeah, the temp score, that's a koto, but they need to be playing a shamisen, or that's a shakuhachi. They can't hold it like a fife. That's not how you hold it. So there was a lot of things like that we would have to just manage, and she and I would catch up on all of that. But she and our anim supervisor, Mike Greenholt, they drove that from a day to day, and man, that was a heavy lift.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. How about you then? What influences did you bring with you to create the look and feel of the show?
So you kind of touched on it. Working on past productions, you learn new techniques with everything you work on. And working with ImageWorks and the Sony Pictures team on Mitchell's, I'm pointing at my poster like you can see it, but. And this is, by the way, that's Manchi right there.
Nice. That's great.
Yeah. Thanks to Mike Rianda for making those, but getting those made for us. But anyway, you learn a lot, and there's you get little techniques, and you try to use them in new different ways based on how the production is needed. So there's a lot of stylization that we were shooting for in this. I mentioned early on the characters were looking very arcane-like, or at first they were very before my time, they were looking very realistic, almost photoreal, and then that shifted to look like arcane. And then Brian and Jane hit their stride when they hit that kind of hey, 2D tech on concrete feel. That's where then I could engage on look dev, and because we had a line tool on Mitchell's, and I could jump in and really help with okay, and here's how we're going to get the line finessed, and how it moves, and based on how close are the characters to camera and that proximity, how should it work? How do reflections work? Things like the highlights on their hair to get that stylized look to the highlight that isn't just painted in and baked in, so that it actually relaxed to light. So I brought past experiences for the actual look of the show. And then what I did because again, I came in about after the first year and a half, I just was a sponge, man. I came in and was like, look, I'm not going to tell you how to make this show. You guys have been making it. I need to just assess. Tell me what your hopes and dreams are. And you brought me on to help you achieve those hopes and dreams. So, Jane showed me, hey, there's this artist that I've been really looking at, Hiroshi Yoshida, or properly pronounced Yoshida Hiroshi. Last name first, and Yoshida-san was he was a huge influence. Not gonna lie, the dude has beautiful ukiyo-e art. Look him up. I highly recommend look him up because it's beautiful stuff. And he was trained in the European oil painting, right? So he was born and raised in Japan, trained in Japan, but was trained also in oil paints in Japan. And then he traveled the world. And so if you look at his ukiyo-e prints, they're so different from ukiyo-e prints, traditional ukiyo-e prints of of the past, because he has a more Eastern Western hybrid. So she was looking at that, and I was like, and you know, and then I pointed out to her, like, you know, these perspectives and the scale and the compositions, this is perfect. Our main character, she's East meets West. She's half European, half Japanese. This guy, his art, it's a Japanese woodblock print. Perfect, right? That's what we need. And it has the Japanese aesthetic, but he brings like a European kind of Western sensibility to it. So it's not just a typical ukiyo-e. And that kind of became the North Star for me, you know. And then anytime we could, it was a, well, how do we make this look more like a woodblock print? Or how do we, you know, design with that Japanese aesthetic? Like, you have to take into consideration the negative space. The absence of detail needs to be thought of. And why did you choose to leave detail out of that? Because that was another thing, like when I first came on, there was a lot of detail and texture everywhere. And I wanted to pull back on that. And the principle of no-tan. So that was another thing that I just kept saying over and over. And my poor art directors, James and Emil, had to hear me say it like so much, because they were in all the meetings and feedback for artists. I'm like, okay, we got to use no-tan here. So turn it to black and white. Forget color. It's an aphrodisiac. Just look at the values. And we have to like, how do you arrange this so that the contrast is where we're supposed to be looking? And that it's very clear, like light over dark or dark over light. And you don't, you know, you need to make sure that you have that feeling of atmospheric fall off and depth. And so no tan. Yoshida-san, Jane loved Pekon Concrete and that line work. And then we wanted it to have a 2D look. And those kind of, that's the, and an impressionistic style to the painting. That was the other thing that Jane mentioned. You know, she wanted to see, like an impressionist painting, the hand of the artist in the frames. And that was another big part of, you know, when the rubber hit the road and we're making these shots, it's like, okay, that's why I had to end up simplifying the backgrounds down and the textures, because it was just too busy. And we needed to have that space to breathe. And so that the backgrounds would be like elegantly work with these simplified 2D characters. So it was an awesome challenge. That's the thing. You read these scripts and you're like, oh my God, how are we going to make this? But that's the fun challenge. And, you know.
That's so interesting because I was blown away by even just the locations and the environments that you know, filled this world that we were inhabiting all of a sudden, and I was taken by the richness and the complexity and the detail. And now you're saying that you actually pulled detail out of all that to allow the scene to breathe and the characters to kind of live in that space. The interesting part of that East meets West with the block work, was that the level of research that you guys went into to kind of to make this world be as real as possible?
I mean, it went even deeper. That rabbit hole goes crazy deep, my friend. Like, I cut my teeth over like the Disney Pixar like mentality, where you have to be believable, and to make things believable. Like, you don't want to be real.
Sure.
Because you're doing an animated show. Like, if you want it to be absolutely real, just shoot it live action. But you have to do your research, and you have to look at, well, what is it actually? So that way you can craft a fiction that is believable. And there's a ton of research. So ukiyo-e prints, you know, that was brought in. We had research consultants, some college professors. My family, like my brother-in-law is a huge history, like Japanese history buff.
Oh, cool.
Actually, I've got some books. One second.
Yeah.
I got some books right here that, like, he sent me. Yeah. So, you know, just like, because it was COVID, right? We couldn't go to Japan. So normally I would want to go and be like, okay, well, let's go and shoot the hell out of all these castles and these locations. And, you know, I'm looking online. and so he was like, oh, I can help you out, and like, here we go. Like this was awesome. This is Edo Castle artist recreation.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yes, right. And so it was so helpful to have these consultants to help us out and do that research, and so that way all those details. I should say with a grain of salt, we didn't have an absence of details. We had all the detail in there. We had all of the research. We had all of the cultural stuff in there. It's just you don't want to have everything everywhere on every shot. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you in this shot, you ask yourself, well, what's this shot about? What's the point of this shot? So let's make sure we have those details in that shot where we're supposed to be looking, and then this over here, not as important. Let's let the eye rest there, or like, let's not have that so busy because a character is going to be right there. So like, let's not have a whole bunch of busyness behind them so that they can be framed with a nice sky and clouds or something like that.
Very cool.
Yeah, a lot of research, man.
No, I totally understand. I have an art background as well, so I
Nice.
get it. And that map gives me those like cross sections of Millennium Falcon vibes. So that's the kind of thing I got to dive into, right?
Oh, I love that stuff. Have you seen the Miyazaki sketchbook?
Oh yeah. Oh man, so good, so good.
Yes. Love it. Okay, we could geek out about that stuff. It's over there on my bookshelf.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Oh man, I love all that stuff. But the one of the scenes that I was so taken with for Blue Eye Samurai was the Bunraku, the puppet theater. That whole sequence was just amazing. What went into developing that whole sequence? Were you involved with that and just making sure that that was done right? Because it was so fun to watch that whole scene and have it jump back and forth between the characters and the puppetry, and I was looking at the whole art of the Bunraku, the puppetry, to see if that was being done right, because I had never seen it before. So I went up and looked it up online and to see how it was done there. I was like, oh my God, they did such a great job with that.
I love it that you watched it and you then were in like,
I went to research.
To look it up. Yeah, because that's exactly it. I've been seeing the feedback from folks online as they watch the show, and they're like, I had no idea about this Bunraku thing.
So good.
It's so rewarding when you do that and people are introduced to something that they never would have seen before. It's awesome. Yes, was involved in it. But again, not just me, it was a team. So Jane, that was another thing from the outset. Like, she's probably told you like that was, again, a look for the characters, trying to get that stylization and simplicity of the Bunraku puppets into the characters as well. So that made its way into every single character, even the ones that weren't a puppet. An aspect of that stylization and look was in every character. But she and Brian did, and we had a costume designer, Sudaret Ballarb, who, they all did a ton of research. So all of those puppets and the way that they move, if you ask Jane and I, we still have notes. There's things that we would give feedback on and would like to finesse and fix, but hey, it's okay. Hopefully you didn't notice it. But yeah, and then the sets, right? The theater itself and how the stage is laid out. So my art director on that episode was Emil Mitev, and Emil, he has a background in stage play production design. So
handy, very handy.
Yeah. So before he came to the US, he was a pretty prolific stage play production designer. And so it just, I didn't know that until after he was assigned the episode. But then when we got to talking about it, I was like, well, then this is perfect. And so he and I discussed early on, kind of, again, keeping that simplicity, not trying to be overly busy. We didn't want to have these elaborate backdrop paintings and things like that, because it's Japanese puppet theater. They don't do that. It's not super detailed. And so he came at it with this very simple approach, and so we utilized the gradients, and he had very simplified. He had an idea for, okay, well, what if it's just really simple shapes, simple backdrops? And I was like, dude, you sold me on simple. When you said simple, like that's perfect, because it needs to be about the puppets, and we need to watch them and like get involved in their story and not be looking at all the backgrounds, right? Especially because we're intercutting. It's not like we're sitting here and watching the puppet show. We're watching Mizu kill 40 clawmen, and then we're going back in time with her husband, and then we come back to the puppets, and then we go back to the past, and then we come back to the puppets. And so having it simple like that was perfect. And then it was great because we could have this gradual transition over the course of the episode in lighting and color, so that if you watch it, she arrives in the spring, right, at Mikio's estate in the past, and then we work our way towards fall. So there's a change in the season as their relationship grows. So do the seasons, and it matures. And then if you watch the puppet show, we start very neutral for the prologue, and then we get into those deep blues, and then we introduce more saturation when the puppets make eye contact and fall in love, and the puppeteers drop away, and now it's just the puppets. There's no puppeteers, because that's the idea, is like, oh, you've been engrossed in the storytelling.
Oh yeah.
And so I was pitching that, and Emil was like, heck yeah. And he did some awesome looking color schemes, and Vanita did the paintings for it. And then we progressed towards those reds, right? When the Onryo comes out and she lays waste to everything, and everything's on fire. Yeah. The phoenix was a visual motif in that, because the Lord, the Ronin's Lord was a phoenix. And a little Easter egg, if you watch in episode 8, the kimono that Fowler topples over, that it's got a phoenix on it. So anyway,
that's awesome. You touched on it very briefly there, but we're recording this after it's been announced that there's a season 2 coming. Now that you've seen all of season 1, and you saw things that maybe you didn't want to get released in the final cut, are you that critical as you watch it now? Are you looking for those mistakes, and with an eye towards fixing it or making it better for season 2?
Well, I'm not just speaking for myself. I can speak pretty much for every artist that works on these things. You can't help it, right?
Sure, yeah.
Like, we all work on it, and we can all see, oh, there's that shot, and I wanted it to have this, so it's hard to go back and watch what you worked on, because all you can see are like, oh, I wish they had just let me do this or that. I will say I am very proud of what we did. I think our team pushed as far as they possibly could with the time we were given, and I think every single person that worked on it should be very proud of it. And I am too included. Very proud of what we did. But all those things that, oh yeah, coulda, woulda, shouldas, 100%, you always take from every production, and you learn, and you bring those learnings to whatever it is you do next. So sure. Yeah, 100%, I plan to take all of the learning from Blue Eye Samurai and take it wherever I go on anything.
Well, you guys should be very proud of what you came up with. That being said, are there sequences? Is there a particular shot that you are so exceedingly proud of having worked on it? When you see it, you're like, man, that came out exactly how I envisioned it. And then conversely, is there a particular scene where you're like, yeah, you know what? If I could do that all over again, I'm just going to axe that completely.
So, well, there's a lot of stuff that actually came out, good.
So much, so good.
Well, at the time when we were working on when we were planning, we were like, well, I hope this works. So I was pleasantly surprised. I was like, oh, all right. Nice. They did it. Cool. It worked. Even Blue Spirit. So I will say that, so one of those is in episode 7 and 8, we travel to Edo, and, there are shots where you can see the entire city and the entire Tokyo Edo Bay basin. Right. And those were like our vendor, our partner studio was like, gulp, we can't do that. And we're like, calm down, it's okay. And so we have a plan. And so we planned it out, and we built it all out, and they did it. And they came out of the other side of it going like, we did it. Nice. And it wasn't as painful as we thought. It was still a lot of work. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't easy, but they were like, hey, yeah, we did it and we like it. So those big Edo shots and palace shots and big fire shots, those were some. Mount Sumaro, I was really happy with the reveal and how that tonally came out. Shout out to our background teams, because they would break down the layers so that our compositing team could play with that stuff. And one such scene was at the end of episode 5, when Mizu's walking and the storm's coming in, and then the lightning flashes, and there's the Onryo in the lightning lit clouds. That was one where like I was painting this and like I know how to do it, but I hope they can get this in their pipeline, because it's a pipeline specific thing. You can totally do it. And our background team, Maxime, was the lead on that, and he made sure it happened. He was like, "Don't worry, I'll get it," and he did it. So
awesome.
There was a lot of that where we would do the designs, do the planning, we'd cross our fingers and like, I hope they can do this, and then there's a lot of partnering where like, okay, well, if you can't do it that way, what if we try it this way? So
yeah. I'm gonna throw this on the screen. See if you can see this.
Yes.
There you go. Beautiful shot. And then here's another image, a little bit more visceral. This one.
That was fun. The blood was fun. Our 2D effects lead, Thomas, man, that guy's a master with blood.
Well, speaking of that, for my show, for fans of my show, we get into the action aspects. We love the martial arts and all of that. And when it came to the action sequences, the weapons, the blood, the movement, getting the styles right, getting the steps right, and all of that stuff. How closely did you and your team have to work with the episode directors to get all of that to look as good as it did, to look as impactful and as powerful and as visceral as it did, and just to make it right? Because I mean, it was so well done. I'm speaking we collectively, but we the fans were so sucked into it all. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Nice. Thank you for that. It's always so nice to hear, that, okay, we did it. And actually that's really important to us when it's your thing, right? It's your community, and that community who knows and is knowledgeable about that stuff. When you can look at it and you can tell us like, hey, you did your homework. This doesn't suck.
Yeah.
And then we're like, oh, good. Thank you. That's what we always strive to do. When it comes down to my involvement, so Jane, of course, was really spearheading and driving the action. And she worked very closely with Sunny, her stunt, choreographer. Yep. Those two were the masterminds behind the storytelling, the choreography. What is the fight going to be? And then the rest of us, we were all in support of that, right? So they laid down that groundwork for us. And then what we needed to do is to make sure where they were, the set that they're on. When Mizu jumps up onto that branch and Mikiyo's slicing at her feet, and she's dodging it and pirouetting, and then she slides down on and hangs from her legs. We needed to make sure that our set was going to accommodate that, and that we frame it right, and that the lighting works, and that the tone works, the colors working. That's where I came in, was to make sure like the set framed it perfectly and accommodated it so that there's enough space for the action to happen. And when do they hit their marks so that they can go from here to here, so that then this new action can happen. They can be right next to this rock to have that happen. And then the lighting, just to make sure that, that was actually the thing that I'm most passionate about on the show, is the lighting and color, and making sure how is that conveying the tone, what they're feeling through this, and how is this scene lit, because there's a story being told with how the fight is choreographed and what they're doing, and then the lighting needs to um, complement that. So like the dojo fight, in episode 1, the idea and my pitch to the lighting and compositing team, and then to our colorist in post, was that we got to look at Raging Bull for this. So
Oh,
this is like,
nice.
it's like a fight. I don't want to see the background. Who cares about the background? I care about who's in the arena, who's in the ring, these guys fighting, so let's let that background drop out. So we focus on the fight, and we're not paying attention to, oh, look at that painting on the wall, and look at those lanterns, and look at the shoji back there. It's like, who cares? It's all about the fight. And same thing like in the chopsticks fight in episode 3 around the campfire, so that we really have that strong campfire, and then the trees and everything just drops to blackness. So
That's so cool. Now, when you're dealing with lighting and shading and all of that, back in the old days, that was all done with paper and pencil and paint, and now you're talking about terabytes of processing power. What were you what kind of drain were you causing on the electrical grid?
excellent question. Because surprisingly, a lot less than you'd think.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, our show is a 2.5D show. So our characters and props are 3D, right? And so, but we stylistically, and a lot of work and looked at was put into making sure that they looked 2D. So they didn't look 3D, they looked more 2D. And all of our backgrounds, and this is where I give kudos to our background painting teams at our partner studio at Blue Spirit. Those guys, the backgrounds, the light is painted in, right? Those backgrounds, they are painted. When you say it's like old school, paper, pen, and brush, yeah, man.
Cool.
It's nothing new. Like like there are some new techniques, but it's all painted. And we used 3D geometry. We built all our sets and modeled them, but then they used those in our vendor's layout stage to output the plates for the background team to paint. That's kind of a quick, like Cliff's Notes explanation, but they would take the 3D to make the plates, they would paint those, and then in comp, they would then drop them in.
That's awesome. So for season 2, then, what is the goal with making things bigger and bolder and better, or is it? Do you want to do more of the same? I mean, I doubt you don't want to do more of the same, right?
I mean, so I'm still figuring out like what I will be doing, but Netflix
Gotcha.
has asked me to come back. I would like to. It sounds like a fun romp. The goal would be to, yes, we want to make it better. We know what Blue Eye Samurai looks like. We know what Mizu's looks like. We're not going to change her,
Sure.
the way she is. She's not going to all of a sudden, turn green like Gamora. So, but the big challenge is we're going to London. So now it's like, well, what does London look like?
Yeah.
In the Blue Eye Samurai look, like how are we going to do that? And I'm sure, I don't know specifics, but I'm sure that the story is going to be, well, how do we elevate it? We have to elevate this I'm hoping from a storytelling, from a drama, from a character standpoint, as well as action. So and scale, an epic scale. Now that we've done that, how can we make it even better?
All right, then talk to me then about what's next for Toby Wilson personally. What do you have going on that you can talk about? What do you have going on that you maybe can't talk about, but maybe drop some hints about?
Okay. I needed a big recharge after finishing this beast. So I'm kind of enjoying the rest of the year with getting a recharge, but I'm doing some some consulting and freelance work for a couple different studios on a couple different projects, which are very cool. But unfortunately, I can't say what they are. It's because they're too early in their NDA, but they're both cool, and they're both trying to push what they're doing further than just what they would be on at face value. Like if you pitched it, you think, oh yeah, okay, but they're like, no, we gotta one up. So
Cool.
and then then there's the prospect of the season 2, which hopefully it all works out, and we'll see. I don't know. I mean, but in the meantime, just plan to keep making more visual stories.
What if you had an unlimited budget and an unlimited creative control? What's a dream project that you would bring to life?
Oh man, I don't know if you could tell, but just over this shoulder, I have a whole bunch of Dungeons and Dragons books. So, Wizards, Hasbro. If you want to make
interesting.
if you want to make a D&D movie, you call me.
Wait. What did you think about the D&D movie that just came out?
Oh, the live action, Chris Pine.
Yeah.
Oh, loved it. Dude,
it was good. It was fun.
That was fun, right? I mean, and you could tell that they were having fun making it. The people who actually played the game made that thing, and I thought it was great. I thought it was a lot of fun. I hope they make more, but they need to make an animated one because that would just be cool.
Did you watch the original animated series? I think you're too young. You might be too young for it.
Oh, but, no.
Yeah,
I did. Oh, I appreciate it. Jeff. I love you. Thank you. I think I'm older than you think, but of course I watched that. I loved that. And I loved the little bit that the most recent D&D movie did, where the Dungeon Master came out and said, because we're having fun and you're a dick.
Yeah, it was a nice little homage there to the cartoon, and that cartoon was formative for me as a kid, so I loved it.
Oh man, I'm sure we could talk more. Like Voltron, that would also be an awesome project to work on.
We have to talk about all kinds of stuff because you're in my wheelhouse here. But
yeah, what are your feelings on Thundercats?
I love Thundercats.
Okay, yeah, man.
There was so much talk about doing Thundercats, redoing Thundercats. I wasn't crazy about the most recent redo of it, the younger version of it, but
Thundercats Roar.
Yeah. But that wasn't for me, so that's totally fine.
That definitely has an audience, and for what it is, it was like, okay, cool, yeah, right on.
And if you ever want to try an Akira redo.
Oh man, well, now you're just teasing me. That would be amazing. I would love to do an Akira, even if it's not directly Akira, but it's esque.
Build on the world, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that would be fun. Oh man, yeah.
Oh my god! All right, so we're gonna have to talk again and do more animation stuff because I think we would blow through a few hours. But tell the audience where they can go to follow you and follow more of the projects that you're working on.
Sure. So I'm not super online, but you can find me on LinkedIn. It's hopefully pretty easy. Just Toby Wilson on LinkedIn. I also have an Instagram, which I just started because of Blue Eye Samurai. So it's pretty light right now, just some fan art that I've done for Blue Eye Samurai. Hopefully we'll post more of some of the behind the scenes stuff, but I just want to let the crew and the team post their work because like it's their time to shine. They did so much work. But yeah, hopefully I'll have some time to do some sketching and some different missives to put on there. And that's Toby Wilson Art on Instagram.
Awesome. So everybody follow him. And if you're going to do Thunderhawks, you might as well do Silverhawks too, right?
Silverhawks. Yeah. And you got to have we got to do the cowboy who flies the ship with a freaking guitar, man. Come on.
Absolutely. Oh man. And Gotcha Man and all of that stuff. Oh my God.
Whoa,
so much stuff.
Ultraman is coming out, so that's cool.
That's cool. That's cool.
So
Yeah.
I have high hopes for that. I know folks that worked on that, so I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Oh,
That's awesome.
Godzilla minus one. Did you like it?
I have not seen it. I have not seen
You
it.
gotta see it.
Everybody says it's amazing, so I'm going to get that on my list sooner rather than later.
Yes, you have to. It's really good. Really good. I hear they're gonna make a black and white version.
Oh, really?
Like we did for episode 106, which is on YouTube.
Cool. All right. So there you go. So check that out on YouTube. And follow Toby. Toby, this was an amazing conversation. So much fun having you on board. Thank you for taking us into the world of Blue Eye Samurai. And like I said, we got to talk some more about some more animation stuff. So, but all right, follow Toby, and guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Toby, hang on. I'm going to stop the live stream, but thank you so much again. Best of luck. Hopefully, you're back for season 2, and if you do, we'll talk again. But otherwise, we're going to have to get together for some other conversations. But thank you so much for hopping on.
Thank you, sir. Thanks everybody for watching.